What did we say that Frederick William decided was key to protecting the country's safety? A strong army, yes. So he started expanding the military forces. He actually created a force of 80,000 men, which number-wise might not have been as large as some of the other European armies, but it was a very efficient army. It was some of the best trained men in Europe at the time. One of the reasons for this is that Prussians, their society, they don't ask why when they're told to do something from a superior officer. As an American, it's our first instinct of when you're told to do something, you want to know why you do it. That's not the way it was in Prussia. When they were told to do something, they did it. They didn't ask questions. They didn't want to know why. So they had a very strong army. Somebody tell me who the Sun King was.
Louis XIV.
Louis XIV. Okay, why did he take the title the Sun King, or the nickname, if you would call it that? Okay, previously to Louis XIV, what had the French monarch symbol been?
The flowers.
The flowers, right?
Lily flowers.
He kind of viewed that as a wicked symbol, and he wanted to show that he was completely dominant. And when you're on Earth, all the power emanates from the sun, right? So he was making that analogy. He was saying that all power emanates from his throne, from him. So he was showing he was all powerful. Okay? Somebody know what divine right is? We talked about divine right.
The idea that monarchs are the representative of God on earth.
Yes, Mr. Ray, that's what that was. The idea that monarchs were the representatives of God on earth, and that they had been appointed to this position by God himself. Why was it so successful in establishing their control, the monarch's control? Mr. Coffee? Why would saying that you were in power because God put you in power be successful or be effective for a ruler during this time period? We talked about it. Okay, then this time we had two main religious groups, right? Who were they? Not the broader term of Lutherans. And the Protestants and we have the Catholics. Are either one of these groups going to question God? No. They don't want to question God. Yeah. But they might not have entirely believed that the monarch had been put in power by God, but they didn't want to be accused of questioning God. Yes, sir. The answer, divine right. The answer to that one is, it's the theory that absolute monarchs used that claimed they had been appointed to the throne by God and was God's authority on earth and were answerable, and they only answered to God himself. They had no human authority that they had to answer to. Okay? Louis XIV took this one step farther. Remember we talked about it? He said that the Pope was the spiritual leader, but held no political power. What was that idea called? It was on the video. Not skepticism. Had the two chickens fighting in the video.
I don't think I watched it.
Yeah.
We did it, but it just mentions it at the very end. It was Gallicanism. Y'all remember that, Tom?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We're fixing to start talking about Russia. So before we start giving you notes, I'll give you a little bit of background on Russia. We haven't talked a lot about Russia. We mentioned them briefly. Then the 7 Year War, I mean. You knew this on same sheet of paper. Okay? This is going to be chapter 5, section 4. It's your course of study. It's number 5. Pages 174 to 177 in your books. We're going to be doing the first half of it today. Okay, so I'm going to start off. Let's give you background. You don't have to write this stuff I'm telling you down right now. But do listen, and if you have questions, ask the questions, because this is going to provide a background, kind of like a foundation of what you should know about Russia. Okay, Ivan III of Moscow ruled between the years 1462 and 1505. He's the first guy that starts taking steps toward absolutism in Russia. He doesn't become an absolute monarch, but he kind of sets up his children and his grandchildren to become absolute monarchs. First is he conquered lands that surrounded Moscow. Why would that be important? What is Moscow to Russia in this time? It's the capital, right? So why would it be important to control the lands that surrounded your capital? Not so much big army, but it makes it easier to do what to your capital. Protect it from foreigners. So he expanded the territory around Moscow. He finally liberated parts of Russia that had been held under the Mongols for a long time. Yes, sir?
Did you say conquered lands around Russia?
Around Moscow.
Moscow.
Yes. He also drove out the remaining Mongols of the territory. What have we got Mongols before? China, yes. They controlled China for a long time. So he finally drives them out. The Mongols had power in Russia too. And their empire is declining. So as they're declining, Russia kind of takes back some land. The Mongol Empire prevented Russia from experiencing things like the Renaissance and stuff like that. So Russia was kind of behind the rest of Europe. And the last thing he did is he began to centralize the power in the government. He brought the power to him under one guy. What are some steps you have to do to bring power to you, to centralize your power? Other monarchs have done it. Well, land helps. Okay, so wealth helps. What do you use that wealth to do? Yeah, you need to build an army so you can enforce what you say. So what about these nobles? Are the nobles going to want to be ruled completely? So what do you have to do with them?
Hallie Bertram and Dylan Sutton, come to the office, please.
Yeah, you kind of you either have to make them fear you or make them accept you. Okay? You can make them fear you by having them eliminated or stuff like that, or you can make them accept you like Frederick, they did in Prussia. Remember they gave the nobles exclusive rights to be military officers? That's one way you can do it. His son, Vasily, that's a funny name, you're not going to have to know it for the test. Vasily was Ivan III's son. He took over after he did. He continued his father's policies of expanding power. Now Vasily's son is going to become the first absolute ruler of Russia. He's a man known as Ivan IV. Okay? And history will remember him as Ivan the Terrible. It's the same guy. Ivan IV and Ivan the Terrible. It's the same guy. Okay? Now, get these notes down. We're going to talk about the points on each of them. Vasily's son, Ivan IV, come to power in 1533 at the age of 3. Is a 3-year-old going to be running your country? Okay, so who do you think was making these decisions?
His parents, maybe?
Not his parents, his daddy died.
Oh. Is the mom? Is the mom alive?
No, it's going to be the warriors. Which, up under that tells you what the warriors are. Okay? They're Russian nobles. Junkers were nobles in Prussia. Warriors are nobles in Russia. They're kind of competing to gain control of it. Okay? Because they know he's young and he can be influenced. So they want to influence him to accomplish their goals. What other monarch have we talked about? We talked about him last week. his young life was dominated by conflict between the nobles for power. The conflict was called the Fronde.
Are you talking about a person?
Yeah. He was French. Was like, you know? The Fronde, remember, it was French. It was Louis XIV. Remember, he took the throne as a young boy, and the nobles competed around him. They were trying to, some of them were even trying to kill him, trying to take the throne from him. And what effect did we say it had on Louis XIV? It made him strong, but it also, how did he treat the nobles once he got to power?
He made them like.
Mr. Ray?
He made them like respect and stay around him.
Yes, he completely dominated them. He refused to let them ever challenge his authority again by making them stay at the palace of Versailles. That's right. When Ivan IV, or Ivan the Terrible, is 16, he seizes the throne and takes power for himself. He has himself crowned Tsar. Now, here it's spelled C-Z-A-R. Sometimes you'll see it spelled T-S-A-R. It's the same word. It's just spelled differently. Yes, ma'am?
What does that say, the first? Like the headline of it, so I can name it?
Oh, the first Tsar.
C-Z-A-R.
Yes, ma'am, it's right here. And I apologize for that. It doesn't show up good on this PowerPoint. It says the first Tsar.
Thank you.
It's no problem, Miss Allen. Now, Tsar is Russian for Caesar. Why would Ivan IV take the title Caesar?
Caesar, what is it?
Miss Ashley? Julius?
Julius, yeah.
Yes. Julius Caesar had been a leader of Rome, and the leaders that followed him took the name Caesar too, took the title Caesar. And these men had been emperors of Rome. And Rome is, till today, still considered probably the strongest, greatest, longest lived empire in the history of the world. They had great power and great wealth. So why would he choose that title for himself?
Didn't Caesar kill a lot of people?
Yes. Most emperors do.
That's why, because they took after Caesar and wanted to kill a bunch of people.
No, at first he doesn't. We're going to talk about
Caesar
that.
killed a lot of people.
I mean, he fought, that Rome fought wars, yes. Yes. He wants to emulate or give off the presence of a great and powerful ruler. It's the same reason why when you look at the White House and Capitol building, we have domes and columns involved. It's a throwback to that Greek ideals. We're founded in a lot of the Greek ideals. So when we built our buildings, our national buildings, government buildings, we used Greek architecture to kind of show that that's where we was drawing our influence from. Now, he's known as Ivan the Terrible, but when he originally takes the throne in 1547 to 1560, these are known as his good period. And from this time, he'd done a good job ruling Russia. He had married a woman of the Romanov family, which we'll talk about some more later, named Anastasia. And while she was alive, he accomplished good things for Russia. One of those things is he instituted a singular uniform law code. Mr. Ray, why is a singular uniform law code a good thing for a country to have?
They follow one set of rules.
Okay, that's right. Mr. Grant, what do you think? It establishes what's called precedent. That way you have something to look back on. So you're not just flying by the seat of your pants. It gives you an idea of what should be done. Okay? He ruled justly during this time. It was fair. He also continued to expand Russia's borders. Anybody want to guess what changes things in 1560?
He starts to kill people.
Yes, but why?
Because he gets mad.
Yeah, he does. He kind of gets mad. What happens is in 1560, his wife Anastasia dies.
Oh.
And for whatever reason or another, I don't know if he had any truth to the claims, or if he was just being delusional, he was convinced that his boyars had poisoned her. So he turns against them.
Is that where we get Anastasia?
I don't think so. It's Anastasia.
I think there's a song like Love.
There is a Disney movie, I think, but no, it's fantastic. I don't know.
Anastasia,
There's a- Yeah,
That's one of the things.
I think the Anastasia is, I think it's a different Anastasia though. That comes along later. That is the famous, real famous one. Okay, so like I said, in 1560, Anastasia died. I say his full name. Anastasia. And Ivan IV blamed his boyars for her death. It's for the years following this that he earns the name Ivan the Terrible. In response to her death, he creates his own personal secret police. Mr. Brownswell, can you tell me another complete absolute ruler that had his secret police, had a secret police force? And I'm not just talking about ancient times, but modern era too. Mr. Brownswell. Okay, Mr. Nanny? Hitler. Yes, Hitler had his secret police force. The Gestapo. Yes, it was known as the Gestapo. Now these secret police forces, they're not concerned with foreign enemies. That's not what they're looking into. The Gestapo, Hitler's Gestapo, they didn't focus on British enemies or American enemies. They focused on the enemies at home. People within Hitler's rule, own government that he thought might be trying to overthrow it. It's the same thing here. Ivan IV used his secret police to investigate his nobles. Now these men, they would have been elite soldiers, very well trained, probably seen battle, seen war, hardened, and to cap that off, they dressed entirely in black and rode black horses. So there was definitely an air of fear and intimidation with this. This is what he wanted to accomplish with this. Not only eliminate people that he thought might be trying to overthrow him or work against him, but to scare people so bad or intimidate people so bad that they would be terrified to even think about moving against him. Also, Stalin had, now this, it's not this same force, but this idea of a police force, it stays in Russia. And it evolves through the time, but the same concept is what eventually leads to Stalin's let me make sure I get this right. NKVD, Stalin's NKVD, which later forms, was renamed the KGB. There's a lot of Russia's spies and stuff like that. As you can tell by his institution of secret police and this massive response to the supposed assassination of his wife, Ivan IV had a temper. And in 1581, in like a fight with his son, he kills his son, his oldest son. And I think there's 3 different stories about what happened. Mr. Pruitt last class had showed me a version on his phone with talked about Ivan IV had for some reason beat his eldest son's wife, and they were arguing about that, and he hit his son in the head with a staff, and his son laid in a coma for a few days. He eventually died. I don't know what the actual one is. I think Coach Shields said there was 2 other stories. So I don't know exactly 100% which one's which. but he did kill his son. Now this is a huge tragedy for Russia. Not only did Ivan the Terrible kill his own son, which is going to have a major effect on anybody, I would hope so anyway, he also killed his oldest son, who was supposed to be heir to the throne. So when Ivan the Terrible dies 3 years later, in 1584, his second son is left in line to become the ruler, the Tsar. Well, his second son is weak and incapable. Mentally, he's not there. Okay? He's not there to rule. So, when his second son dies, which we're fixing to move on to the next slide. Has anybody got this?
No, the last one.
Okay. But Miss Coffin. I swapped that around. Miss Iowa, Mr. Coffin. It's my bad, y'all. Okay.
No,
Four.
no.
3, 2,
We got a problem.
1. What's that, Mr. Wiley?
I burned my pants, so I don't know.
There you go. Mr. Wiley.
I have a problem. Ivan the Fourth killed.
His eldest son and a fit of rage. Okay, after Ivan the Terrible son, they don't even list his name in the book. The book doesn't have it. I don't know his name. His son died without an heir. Not only did he die without an heir, but he had been a weak ruler. So when he dies, a struggle for power among the Boyars. Who were the Boyars, Mr. Driscoll? Who were the Boyars?
Russian
Landowning nobles, yes sir. There was a struggle for power amongst them. They were fighting for control. This time in Russian history, you can't see it's up down the top. It's called the time of troubles.